Hi, this is Erica Marilyn. I'm the founder of Perfect Legal Video. I'm very excited to have with us today Attorney Nicole Reeves Lavallee. She owns a family and real estate law firm in the Worcester area, and her team is second to none. They are amazing. We are very fortunate to have her with us every week discussing issues in law that we really need, light shed on. There's a lot of misconceptions out there. So the first thing we're going to talk about today, the topic for today is personal property disputes. And I want to welcome you to the show today. Nicole, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's one of those topics that, people always want to talk about, and then they go, wait a minute, that's not what's really going to happen. So let's kind of shed some light on some of that.
Well, that's perfect. So let's talk about these property disputes. I mean, I know that there's probably a lot of different situations and different types of property that we're going to be covering here today. But one of the popular topics that we bring up on the show is divorce and personal property that's divided in a divorce. How do they typically do that? Is it just zoop right down the middle, or do people fight over the lawnmower like I've actually seen in real life documents?
And they fight over the lawnmower. They really do. So obviously we're talking about any personal property. So it could be a bank account, it could be vehicles, it could be household furniture. The household furniture is probably the hardest one to get people to agree on, which should be the easiest one. Bank accounts, it's easy. This is the number you have. Okay, let's come up with the total number of all the assets and let's divide it. Same thing with the car. Okay, this is the fair market value of the car minus the loan. Therefore, the car is worth $5,000. So again, those are kind of more or easily definable in terms of their values. Then we have the other stuff, the household items. Again, collectibles are going to fall in a little bit more of a different category, where we're going to have those issues. Maybe they have to be appraised, maybe they're more collectibles, i.e. sentimental value. But obviously if collectibles have value, then we're going to get a value on those, and again, those are easily defined. What we're talking about more today is that the personal property that's not tangible, it's tangible, but it's not, we don't want to put a number on it. I don't want to go through your house and go, your living room couch is worth $100, but I paid $5,000 for it. Yes, but it was 20 years old. We don't want to do that. So we're not going to do that. So it's really all of those household furnitures. Yes, I get collectively it's worth something. But if you take it to a garage sale, how much are you really going to get for it? Probably not that much. That's the stuff we're talking about, is collectively the bulk of your assets aren't worth anything. So it's really more of dividing the living room furniture and the bedroom furniture to make sure each household has some of that furniture, but all the other stuff really kind of is minutia for the courts.
Furniture's the worst too. I mean, I had a dispute over furniture once in a business situation. A woman was supposed to rent me her space and give me the furniture, and the whole deal went south, but I still had paid for the furniture. So I went to go pick it up, and she had all the same types of pieces that I bought, but they were different than what I bought. So instead of a beautiful futon, she had this fancy futon. It was like a inexpensive, like, piece of crap couch that she had found somewhere. And so it was literally like, oh, here's this. She bought a chair. Well, here's not the chair she bought, but like the, horrible one. So I guess it was on me. I didn't know to take pictures and, not trust somebody. But I can see where that can really be a tough situation when you're in court, because you're right. You can't really value a 20-year-old piece of furniture. It might be sentimental, but it might be ready for the garbage.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things that, like I said, the court really is not going to get involved. And it's frustrating because the client's like, but I'm entitled to this and I really think it's worth something. Okay, great. How much would you pay for it? And that's what I asked the client. They're like, oh, well, it's worth, at least $5,000. Okay, So if I take it to your ex and I say, pay me $5,000 for it, are you willing to pay him 5,000? Oh no. Well, wait a minute. So you just told me it was worth 5,000. No, it's not. No, you're right. It's not worth that. And now we're getting at real numbers because they realize you can't have it both ways. You can't say it's worth something, but I'm not willing to pay for it.
Yeah, that is so true. So what about another situation where you trust someone, you marry them, you don't have a prenup, yet you own a building or you own some valuable property? What happens now if you're trying to get divorced and you know you had this property before you even knew them, maybe for 10 years before you knew them? What happens to the property? Does it get split up?
So if we're talking about real property, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the value of that property as of the date of marriage and what the outstanding mortgage was or loans were on that property and what the value of that property is today. And then we're going to come up with a number. So let's say, for example, there's no mortgage on this property to make my life easy. And the fair market value at the time of the property purchase, at the time of the marriage, was worth 200,000. And the property today is worth 300,000. So we're going to know that it increased by 100,000. Arguably, your spouse would be entitled to 50,000. If we're just using the basic number. So that's how we're going to come up with it. Now, if we're talking about personal property, again, unless it's actually going to increase in value and you can show that, we're not going to run that analysis. We're going to say it was owned prior to marriage, go away. So this would be maybe your antique car. So if you had an antique car that was, a 1980 car or 1970 car, whatever it was, and you remodeled it and you refinished it prior to marriage, and you've kept it in the garage and you only take it out on the weekends or whatever, and it really hasn't increased in value and it hasn't decreased because you haven't used it that much, then the value is probably going to be the same and it's going to be worthless to you because there's going to be no increase. So we really got to look at, did it actually acquire any additional value during the marriage? And chances are personal property would not.
Do they count the depreciation of property?
They do. They do it the exact same way as they would. Again, if we're talking about real estate, they're going to look at the same thing. If we use the same factors and the house was worth 200,000 at the time of marriage, again, no mortgage, and the house is worth 150 now, great. You get zero because that's how much has gone up. And it's not going to hinder the person that owned it premaritally. So we are going to take a look at that. And obviously certain things like vehicles that are driven are going to depreciate. So you're not going to get that value. Furniture, not going to get the value because it's going to depreciate over time as you're using it, as you're, walking on it or sitting on it or whatever you're doing with it, laying on it, you're going to depreciate that value. So again, it's not something that the court is going to do an over and analyze and come up with numbers. They're going to go, it's depreciated. What's the problem? What is it worth today?
Well, that's definitely interesting. Now, I mean, I think this is also tough. It's a little bit like the personal property situation that we just discussed, but what about a family heirloom?
Well, it's going to be when was that family heirloom acquired. So again, and maybe it's a family heirloom that was acquired during the marriage. So i.e., husband's parents died and left them the Rolex. Okay. He had no Rolex before marriage. He has a Rolex now. It's worth a value. So that's going to be an inheritance, and that's going to be something that we're going to look at and go, okay, so what is that value? Obviously, a Rolex is going to have value, which is why I'm using that as an example. So we're going to have to figure it out. And then we're going to say, well, when did it happen during the marriage? Did it happen when they were together for 20 years, or did it happen when they were together for only a year? So the court's going to look at that and where it is in relationship to the divorce. So it's going to come into play in terms of it has a value as a family heirloom, and we need to take a look at it. Who's going to get it is obviously going to be the person that inherited it. But the question is, how are we going to offset that, if any? Do we need to do an offset? And again, those are the factors we're going to look at. So it really kind of depends on what that asset is.
I mean, that's super interesting. I mean, so I know there's a process, and a lot of times before you go to court, and really have judges make decisions. You do mediation. I mean, a lot of people do. What happens with a judge in these situations? Will the judge sit through a trial just on assets and make decisions on them?
Absolutely not. If there's one particular item, or there's, we're fighting over this, and it's a sentimental thing and it's one thing, yeah, the judge will listen to probably 5 minutes of testimony from each of you. Other than that, he's not going to do it. Your attorney is not going to do it. Again, we're going to go with, if you were to sell it at a garage sale, how much money would you get for all this property? Oh, I would probably get, $5,000. Okay, great. And how much money do you think you're going to be spending in attorney's fees to get that? Because a trial is going to cost you $10,000. So let's do the math. And when you really put it in perspective, it makes more sense that we're not going to do it. From the judge's perspective, the judge is going to get very pissed off at you if you can't work it out. The judge is not going to want to hear the testimony. It's not going to be something he decides. I've had multiple judges have said unequivocally, I'm not addressing personal property. Figure it out, counsel.
So then what do? I mean, is that you have a little trading match, or like, I'm not sure, like, what happens in this case? I don't remember anything particular happening in my case. We just listed a bunch of stuff, and one of us had bought a ton of new furniture after they moved out, and worth a ton of money, but it really didn't come into play at all. So I guess, like, what happens if somebody's really adamant?
If they're adamant, there's two things. One, they can do a mediation or conciliation. And more likely it's going to be a mediation, because the conciliator who's doing it for free is going to have little tolerance for it. They're just not going to want to do it, because again, now you're wasting their time when they should be getting paid for a service they're not getting paid for to listen to you. So really it's going to boil down to most likely a mediation of those issues, or we're going to do what is called an A/B list. A/B lists are always fun, because people think that they're going to get away with something and they never do, because it always backfires. So we create this list, and client's going to work on this list with us, and then I'm going to tell them all the pros and cons, and they're going to go, oh, I need to fix that list.
Yeah, that is so interesting. And so what if something like what happens to me happens during a divorce, where you either get back similar property, but it wasn't the same thing that you were talking about? Or what if the person went into a rage and had a big bonfire, and you get it back and it's, half burnt or slashed or somehow damaged? I mean, there's a lot of animosity in divorce. You are so good at having a calm demeanor when handling these situations on behalf of your clients, but when they're alone with the property, what do you see this happen? I mean, and what do you do?
I see it quite often, and you really have to kind of know what's going on. So, an ideal world, we come up with this list and we agree and we go to the property before the divorce is final. That's the ideal world. When we don't have that ideal world, then we define it as best as we can. It is the dining room, a table that has 6 seats and, has a buffet on the side made of oak, and it's light colored, whatever. I don't care. Give me as many details as you humanly can. Give me a picture of it. I'll staple it to it. Give me something. Give me a sales receipt would be ideal. But again, we usually don't have those things. So give me as many descriptive words as you can. Give me information like, it's a John Deere riding lawnmower that is model blah, 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 then whatever, if they have one. But also tell me it was in good working order. Tell me, oh, this motor's bad. Tell me whatever it is you can tell me about this, so I can define it. Because the more I can define it, and the more likely it is that the other party's going to sign off on it, then we might have something to hang our hat on. It's just, hey, I get the dining room furniture, right? You didn't even say which house. Cool. I got to find one on the street and give it to you. And that happens. So again, we need to define what that looks like, where it was last seen, what condition it's in. If it's got scratches on it, the other party who knows they're going to give it to them, identify that stuff. Be upfront about it, because when you're not, they're going to come back and they go, hey, this wasn't the right thing, or it had scratches, or you damaged it, or it's on 3 legs now, whatever it is. So you both want to be as upfront and as detailed as possible.
It would be great because like rental car companies do a great job of this. They actually have a picture and they've done a walk around and they'll tell you where they know the scratches are, and then you do a walk around. If you find something that they didn't see, you write it down. I mean, it would be great if we could start our marriages that way. I'm just kidding. But I mean, it is terrible. And then I can imagine that sometimes people are just like, oh yeah, you'll get it back. And then it's checks in the mail kind of a situation. Oh yeah, you can come pick it up. I mean, that situation with me, I went and rented a U-Haul and actually drove somewhere only to find that the furniture was all the wrong furniture. And so I didn't even take it. I mean, I can imagine that happens a lot, or maybe it doesn't get returned because of something like that. Do you see that often? Is there a way to enforce it?
There's absolutely a way to enforce it. Again, once you sign this document, then that's what you have. Again, if you haven't defined it and you just say the dining room set, okay, this is the dining room set. No, it isn't. Well, the judge isn't going to go back and hear testimony. The judge want to listen to both of you talk about what that dining room set looked like and what you got? No. Now, obviously, it's again something that's damaged is going to be easy. I've had people where the headboard happens to be broken and it's in 5 pieces. Well, okay, come on, guys. So again, you have to take it with a grain of salt. I haven't seen this property in 2 years, and I came back and there's scratches on it, but I don't remember them. Okay, well, could they have been there before? Well, they could have been, but I don't remember them. Okay, well, again, let's use our judgment. Obviously slashes in furniture. Well, I know there weren't slashes, and they're gashes, and they're all the way across. Like, some things you're going to know the other party's destroying. Some things it's going to be wear and tear. So again, you have to use your best judgment. But if that's the case and it happens, then you have an ability to file a contempt because they didn't comply. But again, if you don't define it properly, then the judge has to find that the order was clear and unequivocal and you disobeyed it. And if it's not clear and unequivocal and it just says dining room set, prove that it's not the same dining room set.
Well, the other thing is that some of these divorces last for years and there's just natural damage that happens. I've had a couple of puppies that like to gnaw on furniture, and you find out later and it's like, oh shoot, when did that happen? So I'm sure that there's a lot of interesting situations with it. I mean, but you really shed a lot of light on this. I mean, what would you suggest you do? Like, if someone's going to go through a divorce, everyone just puts their stuff in storage and aren't allowed to touch it until decisions are made, or what can you do?
No, in an ideal world, you're going to be responsible adults and you're going to have a conversation and you're going to say, I want to take this, this, and this. Is it okay? Yes, go right ahead. That's what you're going to do in an ideal world. You're not going to spend money foolishly on an attorney to go through this. You're not going to piss off your judge by dealing with stupid issues like this. Like, the judge doesn't want to hear it. And again, unless it's completely destroyed, chances are they're not going to want to listen to you.
So unless this is like real estate or something else that is of real value that you can actually, I guess, measure, then the judge is not going to spend a lot of time on it.
No, let it go. Let it go. It's not worth the aggravation. It's not worth the hassle. It's property. Again, sometimes it's more of, well, I don't have a bed for my child and I really need a bed. Okay, well, that might be semi-legitimate, but those are things that we're going to address early on, not at the final divorce. And again, maybe we just give you, $500 to go and buy a new bedroom set. Sometimes that's more cost effective than fighting over it.
That's true. And then the kid gets a new bedroom set. Win-win. Well, I do want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. Your insights are so helpful to everyone that watches.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And thank you everyone for watching. We hope you have a wonderful weekend and look forward to seeing you again next week.